When it was decided that the Lexus RX was going to be a two-row crossover only moving forward, it created a lot of questions surrounding the Lexus brand because between the RX and the GX is a rather substantial gap, where there is no three-row crossover that can now go head-to-head with the newest MDX and Infiniti QX60, until today with the 2024 Lexus TX. It goes without saying that the TX is very important for the Lexus brand and lineup because traditionally the RX has gone head-to-head with the MDX and Infiniti QX60. But now with vehicles getting larger, especially at this price point, Lexus had to step up their game with a vehicle that not only takes elements from the GX, but also gives you the on-road comfort from the RX. And in this video, I want to go over everything about the TX. Take a look at the exterior, the interior, take it out for a test drive, and also see why, if you are looking for a family-friendly luxury crossover right now at around $60,000 to $70,000, then maybe taking a look at the Lexus TX might be a great decision. Now before we get in this review, I'd like to thank Ira Lexus in Danvers, Massachusetts for allowing me to this review. Their link will be in the description below so you can check out their extensive Lexus inventory. Also, before we get started, make sure you hit the subscribe button and click the notification bell so you're notified every time a new video goes live on the channel. And so, without wasting any further time, let's get right in this review. The unofficial American motto is that bigger is better, and no other industry has taken that to heart in the 21st century than the automotive world, as both sedans and crossovers have seen large increases in size compared to the 1980s and 1990s. It seems as though for crossovers that Americans aren't content with their current options, more specifically for the three-row crossover SUV market. Designed exclusively for America, the Lexus TX is primed and ready to replace the RXL, which wasn't the best equipped to compete in this segment. But consequently, with this new behemoth, Lexus may have just kicked off a new and improved three-row crossover market that should satisfy even the most stubborn of consumers. Starting off with pricing, the TX 350 we have today is a luxury, coming in at just under $61,000, and will be the top trim before you can upgrade to the 500. With Lexus having a void in their lineup between the RX and GX, to expect a buyer who enjoys the traditional midsize crossover driving dynamics to upgrade to the body-on-frame GX that brings rugged and durable characteristics would be a huge stretch for the typical RX owner. The TX, in essence, is meant to be a bridge between the two current models, but is also more conducive for a family. With a length of 203 inches, the TX is about 5 inches longer than the Acura MDX, and will be around 3 inches longer than a Jeep Grand Cherokee L for comparison. While not necessarily a direct competitor, the TX's road presence and size would be comparable to a BMW X7, but considering the vast difference in pricing, Lexus currently has the biggest vehicle amongst its domestic rivals. Despite the unlikelihood of going off-road with this model, ground clearance comes in at 8.3 inches, falling right in line with others in this segment. It may surprise you to find out that this all-new TX shares the same underpinnings as the Lexus RX, as its outward appearance bears no resemblance to its smaller sibling. Further compounding its place in the lineup, the TX's styling and front fascia as a whole could be summed up as a softer, more pedestrian GX or LX with its boxier shape. The subtle chrome accents adds a nice touch, and the full body color finish certainly exudes a sense of luxury and opulence. Just like with the RX, the grille blends in with the overall aesthetics of the front end, which Lexus has incorporated into their design language for a growing number of their vehicles. The full LED headlights and fog lights cap off the front portion of this crossover, and while there are some sharper body lines that brings a small taste of sporty qualities, at least in this trim, the TX appears classy and upscale. Moving over to a side profile, we have the optional 22-inch multi-spoke alloy wheels, further enhancing the sophisticated stature of this vehicle. To our surprise, upsizing on the tires barely affects the ride quality, and some of that can be attributed to the soft suspension for the TX, which seamlessly glides over imperfections, which is impressive considering the 350 doesn't have adaptive suspension, as that's a feature for the 500, you'll have body color folding side mirrors with turn signal indicators to go along with blind spot detection for added safety. Then making your way around to the back, the signature LED taillights that run across the rear fascia is a design element that will be present on the new GX. Because of the boxier and squared off shape compared to the streamlined and traditional crossover road presence we see from the RX, the TX, from an aesthetics perspective, takes a lot of inspiration from the GX, as the next generation is being repositioned to be a rugged and off-road capable luxury SUV, which is the polar opposite of this three-row crossover's purpose. Since the 500 will be the sportier variant for the TX, the 350's final third does have a clean yet reserved appearance that will blend in on the roadways quite nicely. Powering this TX is a 2.4-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, producing 275 horsepower and 317 pound-feet of torque, and is paired with an 8-speed automatic transmission. Out of the gate, the TX comes equipped with a plethora of powertrains that includes hybrid and plug-in hybrid technology that ushers in better fuel economy and performance. And for those looking to go the whole 9 yards, the top of the range 550 will be powered by a V6. In 350 form, the TX is compliant, while not being the most exhilarating. However, as a family hauler, this 3-row crossover is designed for leisure and comfort over a sporty driving experience. However, where Lexus's newest crossover outshines its competitors is with the on-road comfort, and that's a defining characteristic for this model. Regardless of the trim for the 350, front-wheel drive does come standard, but we have all-wheel drive for year-round capability. For fuel efficiency, you're looking at somewhere in the ballpark of 20 miles per gallon in the city and 26 miles per gallon on the highway. As you make your way inside, the TX has a familiar interior, showing its relation to the RX, but your experience behind the wheel will likely feel more grand and upscale, especially with the luxury trim we have today. You're greeted by power-adjustable, heated and ventilated semi-aniline leather seats with ultra-suede inserts for both the driver and passenger. As you can probably tell, bolstering is rather firm for a crossover in this market, providing comfort and support that far exceeds what we see from rivals. Due to these seats' adjustability, passengers of all shapes and sizes should be able to find their ideal seating position. With our model being equipped with the $2,150 tech package, you'll have a 12.3-inch digital instrument cluster, a head-up display, digital rear-view mirror, and panoramic view monitor, all of which modernize the interior or improve the quality of your day-to-day ownership experience. As we first saw with the RX, the touch-sensitive buttons mounted on both sides of the heated leather-wrapped steering wheel control the instrument cluster and that head-up display, helping you customize what you see in front of you. Rather than simply integrating digital tech into the dashboard for the sake of eye candy, what can be displayed for the screen is limited to relevant information, which Lexus has always been known to do for their vehicles to minimize distractions. Then taking a glance over to the infotainment system, you'll have a 14-inch touchscreen with wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto compatibility, and you can subscribe for onboard navigation. Perfect for those with a family who will occupy all 3 rows, the optional 21-speaker Mark Levinson surround sound system will amplify the audio of your favorite music for everyone inside the TX. Becoming common throughout the Toyota and Lexus lineups, this head unit becomes second nature to use after a few minutes, as there's no home screen per se, and instead you have icons mounted to the left that get you to different menus. At the bottom of the screen will be the controls for the 3-level heated and ventilated front seats, heated steering wheel, fan speed, AC, and dual zone climate control, as Lexus shifts away from physical buttons, much like we're seeing from competitors. It's from this touchscreen where you can select your desired drive mode, but also even deactivate or activate safety systems. And speaking of safety, you'll have a number of different camera angles to choose from to help park the TX, including a top view and front-facing camera. Beneath the screen, you'll have 3 USB-C inputs, the buttons for your panoramic 3D camera and park assist, and a wireless phone charging pad. Then as we briefly take a look at the center console, This is where the hill descent control, auto start stop, traction control, auto vehicle hold, and electronic parking brake can be found. And for the standard storage compartment, you'll have plenty of room for smaller items, such as a smartphone or a wallet. Then to round out the front seating area, above will be a panoramic moonroof, which will let in a lot of natural light, especially with the birch-colored upholstery on this TX. Now moving on to the second row, our model is equipped with captain's chairs, but the TX 350 does come available with bench seats if you want to squeeze in a third person in the second row. However, your passengers will be thanking you with these captain's chairs because they're very comfortable, but also on this TX 350, we have heated and ventilated seats. So whether it's warm or cold out there, people are going to be very comfortable in this vehicle. Now, one thing I do want to point out here with the TX 350 is its practicality and passenger volume. So for the second row, you have right around 39.5 inches of legroom, which is an inch above what we see from the Acura MDX and about an inch and a half more than the Infiniti QX60. A lot of three-row crossovers in this market and price range will hover around 37 to 39 inches, making the TX 350 one of the more practical and spacious vehicles in this growing and evolving market. Of course, with this being a three-row crossover and a luxury crossover at that, the second row seats do slide on rails to maximize legroom, not only for the second row, but also the third row as well. And with the seats adjusted all the way back, I have plenty of space to relax and enjoy the driving experience. Also, of course, these captain's chairs do have their own armrests, so it feels very plush, upscale, and very classy in this crossover. Also, another thing too I really like as well is that there's ultra suede inserts on the seats for the second row, just like we saw up front. And it really just adds to the class that this vehicle is really trying to exude and showcase. Also, you do get sunshades, so that way on a sunny day like today, you don't have that sun glaring down on you. Also back here, you have 3-level heated and ventilated seats, as I just mentioned, which is optional. Also climate control, 2 USB-C inputs. Then between the captain's chairs, you have a small center console where you can have 2 cup holders, but also this console is removable, giving you an easier path to the third row seats. And finally, taking a look at the third row seating area, hopefully you guys can see me all the way back here, you're going to have right around 33.5 inches of legroom, which to put that into perspective is about 4 inches more than the Acura MDX. I look at the MDX as being the barometer in this price range and for vehicles in this segment because it is very family friendly and practical. Yet the Lexus TX makes the MDX feel a bit more cramped and claustrophobic for sure, and a lot of it is because the Lexus TX is designed specifically for the American market, and because of that, you'll be able to fit some smaller, average-sized adults back here, like people around maybe the height of 5'7" or 5'8". I'm around 5'5", and I don't feel cramped or claustrophobic at all. This seat is adjusted all the way back. Now, it could be on a bit of a recline, but outside of that, I think that if you are taking the family maybe across country or just going to the mountains to check out the fall foliage, everyone can join you in this vehicle. Also, Lexus could have squeezed in a third seat for the third row, but decided not to since they wanted to maximize that shoulder room and legroom, which I think was a really smart choice. Also, when it comes to that shoulder room, there's plenty of it. So even if there's someone around my height sitting next to me, I'm not going to feel very cramped at all. Also, when it comes to headroom, because you have that higher roofline, that squared off roofline, you have plenty of headroom. So if you have smaller kids sitting back here or average sized adults, no one will be hitting their head on the headliner at all. Then where the armrest is, you are going to find a button where you can recline and relax. So anybody can sit in this vehicle and feel welcomed. And that, to me, is really where the TX stands out amongst its competitors and rivals. Right now, we do not see a lot of vehicles of this size in this segment, outside of the Toyota Grand Highlander, but also the Volkswagen Atlas, which both vehicles would not be in this segment or price range. So if you are looking for a luxury 3-row crossover and SUV, the TX should be on your list of considerations, especially if you do have a larger family. Then to wrap up the third row, you will have a USB-C input on both sides, so that way you can plug in your smartphone or tablet. Now coming around to the back, the practicality and family friendliness continues on this model. Of course, you are going to receive a power liftgate And inside, behind the third row seat, you're looking at right around 20 cubic feet of room, which no one else in this market is going to give you. A lot of three-row crossovers in this price range come in with around 17 to 18 cubic feet of room, which isn't necessarily bad, but if you're trying to maximize the amount of space available for a vehicle of this size, that's where the TX, in my opinion, is a great option. I was able to fit all my camera gear today with no issues at all. So that's 2 bags of camera gear, a gimbal box, and a tripod, on top of the fact we do have the mats for this TX, along with the first aid kit and small toolkit, which is really fantastic to see. Lexus claims you can fit around 7 carry-on cases behind the third row seats, and I definitely believe them. So if you have kids in the third row and you're going grocery shopping, I think you can definitely fit those groceries back here with ease. But then with the third row seats folded, you're looking at right around 57 cubic feet of room, which is well above what we see from the Acura MDX and Infiniti QX60. The MDX is going to have about 9 cubic feet less behind the second row seats. So this right here alone, if you're just going to use this vehicle as a 2-row SUV, you have plenty of space to go on adventures, go on weekend getaways, or just store items back here with ease. Also, best of all is that the third row seats do fold automatically. You can also raise them as well with the press of a button. Now, that isn't uncommon in the luxury markets, but it is still great to see, especially if you do have kids or you're just carrying stuff with you and you don't want to manually fold those third row seats. Then with the second row of seats folded, you're going to have an overall cargo capacity of 97 cubic feet of room, which outclasses every luxury 3-row crossover in this market. But also, to be fair, the Lexus TX is the largest offering right now that we see, at least amongst its domestic rivals, but also even among European competitors as well. So that is not too much of a surprise for me to see this much space make its way into this vehicle. As I said before with the third row seats, the only vehicle that is comparable, that's not from Toyota or Lexus, to what the TX is offering would be the Volkswagen Atlas. But again, with the Atlas, you're probably cutting corners when it comes to luxury and refinement. And if you are looking at buying a 3-row crossover at around $65,000 to $70,000, the TX is going to give you class-leading interior space. And that, to me, is just difficult to pass up, especially right now in 2023, heading into 2024. So we're now behind the wheel of the 2024 Lexus TX. Let's take this 3-row crossover out for a test drive to see how it performs, how it handles, how it drives, how it compares to the Lexus RX, the GX, and other 3-row crossovers and SUVs in this price range. There's not a lot of vehicles in this market that are of this size, outside of probably the Jeep Grand Cherokee L, and of course the Toyota Grand Highlander and Volkswagen Atlas, but those two vehicles are not in this market, so the TX might be in a league of its own. What's also worth noting is that the TX is built in America. And for vehicles that are designed specifically for the US market, they tend to have some quirks and differences compared to other vehicles in the lineup, especially for luxury brands. And we saw that with Volkswagen as well with the Atlas. But the TX is a bit of a different story. It is built on the same platform as the Lexus RX and other sedans and crossovers from Toyota and Lexus. And immediately, I don't notice much of a difference at all, outside of styling and interior layout. What is a bit of a surprise to me is that, sure, they did use ultra-suede inserts on the dashboard and the seats. I would have loved to see that on the headliner as well. But for a lot of luxury vehicles, you tend to get maybe wood trim inlay, carbon fiber, or brushed aluminum, and we don't get that on this model. It's almost as if Lexus was designing this vehicle specifically for family use while still giving you the luxurious elements and refinement that you're looking for at around $65,000 to $70,000. And to me, that's the first thing I notice with this crossover. It feels very well refined, but also the chassis and the platform it's built on gives you a lot of rigidity, and you feel that. You tend to feel the weight with this vehicle in the corners, but also even the way it sits and it's planted on the roadways. And that does translate to the steering as well. The steering has a nice weighted feel to it, which actually isn't typical for an American-made vehicle from a luxury brand. So this is, right off the bat, really giving me a lot of great vibes here when I'm just looking at what this vehicle's given me in the first 2 minutes of this test drive. And we're at highway speeds. Now, of course, we are test driving the TX 350. I know the guys at Ira Lexus wanted me to feature the 500, really to showcase what this vehicle can do, and also its performance as well, because the turbocharged 4-cylinder engine with around 275 horsepower and just over 300 pound-feet of torque isn't going to be the most peppiest. However, I think a lot of people, and a lot of you who are watching this video, are going to choose the 350 over the 500 simply because of the pricing. Because even though this model is well equipped, it's a Lux, it's coming in at around $70,000, which is where the 500 would begin. And also, when you factor in the amount of features you have here, such as heated and ventilated seats, not only for the front row, but the second row as well, you're going to love those small touches. But also, I think that when you're looking at buying a Lexus TX, you want the family-friendly aspect. You want that interior space. You want that quality you might not find from the Toyota Grand Highlander, but also other vehicles in this market and price range. And you're going to enjoy what this vehicle is giving you, not only from the on-road perspective, but also just the refinement, just the fact that you don't hear any outside noise at all. The fact that we have 22-inch wheels on this model, none of that is translating to the cabin, but also the suspension is nice and soft. This is really a great family road trip vehicle. But also when you compare this to other 3-row crossovers in this price range and segment, such as the Acura MDX or Infiniti QX60, sure, with the 350, you're not going to have that sportier driving experience like you'd find with the 500, and when you compare that to the Acura MDX, regardless of whether it's an A-Spec or Type S. But from a luxury perspective, this is far and away better than what we see from the Infiniti QX60. Also, I love the technology that you have here with this vehicle, the full digital gauge cluster, which is optional, but also this 14-inch touchscreen, which is well within arm's reach, but also you still get physical dials for your climate control settings and the volume. So it's just really designed and really placed very well, but also perfect for the driver, and the way the fact that that screen is geared more towards you, it just feels more driver-centric behind the wheel of this SUV. Now, within the lineup, comparing it to the RX and also the GX, this does feel like a tweener. It feels like a vehicle that slots between the two very nicely. And you feel that when it comes to the seating positioning. So the RX, it is a mid-size crossover per se. I think the fact that now there's only a 2-row, it might be being pushed to the compact crossover market just a bit, although it does outsize the BMW X3, Audi Q5, and Infiniti QX50 by a country mile. However, this feels more like a traditional 3-row SUV. And even though this is not built on a body-on-frame chassis, the fact that you do sit this high up and have a commanding feel and presence over the roadways, this feels more SUV-like. This feels like it's a vehicle that could go head-to-head with maybe a Chevrolet Tahoe or GMC Yukon, and also the Jeep Grand Cherokee L, which that again is built on a body-on-frame chassis. So it has this nice balance of feeling like a crossover when you are driving over uneven pavement or just when you're on the highway, but it also feels somewhat truck-like, which I think some buyers are definitely going to love. Now, considering the size of the TX, lengthwise you don't feel it. You don't feel as though you're driving a vehicle that's the length of 203 inches. Width, this is actually about an inch thinner than the Acura MDX. So maneuverability-wise, it's going to feel similar to an Acura MDX, but also a Lexus RX as well. So it's a nice transition. It's going to feel very natural if you are making the upgrade from an RX. And I think you're not going to have any issues getting used to the size of this SUV. Now, on some back roads, you immediately feel the body roll, which is to be expected. If you're looking for something a bit more enthusiastic and sports-oriented, go with the 500. You're going to get a better powertrain, also a hybrid powertrain at that. The suspension is tuned for comfort and leisure, more importantly. And you certainly feel that. When you do go over the bumps and imperfections, you barely feel them, which is a bit of a surprise since we do have the larger tires on this model. But as I'm going through the corners, nice firm steering, and there's a lot of confidence here for a vehicle of this size. And we're gonna place the TX in sport mode. We'll see what that does to throttle response and steering. Accelerations definitely get more aggressive. You feel the torque far more in sport mode, and also this 8-speed automatic shifts pretty smoothly. I do notice some added weight to the steering, and we're going to find out what the performance is like when we do get on the highway. On the brakes, nice and strong. You don't need to get too deep into the brake pedal to slow this vehicle down. Obviously, I'm taking that corner a little slower than normal just because you certainly feel the body roll. On throttle, and I'm already at highway speeds. Like I said before, most likely you are going to go with the 500 if you want a sportier experience. But the 350 provides a sufficient amount of power. Once again, at around 65 miles an hour, you don't hear a lot of wind noise. But also, it feels pretty composed on the roadways. You're not going to have a lower center of gravity, so you're not going to feel too connected to the roads. However, comparing it to other luxury 3-row crossovers, like even a Volvo XC90, I think this feels a bit more peppier. It also feels a bit more responsive as well. And a lot of it is because of the torque. You don't get a lot of low-end torque, but once you get into the mid-range, that's where the TX does take off and does give you the power necessary to pass lower drivers, but also just to get on the highway safely. When I was filming the TX earlier today on the lot, I had a customer come up to me asking questions about the TX. This customer owns a GX and was really curious as to what the Lexus TX offers, how is it different, but also what's the point of this vehicle? For Lexus, they find themselves in an emerging market. Not too many rivals in this segment have a crossover built on a unibody chassis of this size. There's only one other competitor, which is Volkswagen, which really isn't a competitor at all with the Volkswagen Atlas. Americans demand large SUVs. They may not necessarily want a body-on-frame chassis. All they're looking for is practicality, interior space, and a vehicle that can safely and comfortably get their families from point A to point B, or if they're going on weekend road trips, they can have everyone join them on those journeys. And the Lexus TX is better equipped to handle that than what we see from the RX and what we see from the GX. This vehicle, the way you look at it from the exterior, when you look at the interior, the amount of practicality, this is the perfect vehicle for a customer in a growing niche market. One that might not prioritize performance necessarily on the low end, but certainly gives you the quality and the luxurious aspects that you're not going to find from minivans, but also mainstream 3-row crossovers. As I said before, this isn't necessarily the most dynamic compared to, say, an Acura MDX, but this also isn't as sedated as what we see from the Volvo XC90 or Infiniti QX60, and the Infiniti QX60 has a V6. Do I think you're going to miss the V6? Probably not. I mean, if you want to go with the V6, you can go with the 550, that will be a plug-in hybrid. But I think the Turbo 4 is a perfect pairing with this 8-speed automatic. Although you could go with the Turbo 4 that is a hybrid with the 500. Which I think is the buy for the TX for 2024, although I don't think that you'll be feeling as though you made a mistake going with the 350. And this customer was very surprised as to what I had to say about the TX in terms of its interior space, in terms of this powertrain, in terms of what this vehicle gives you compared to an RX, but also a GX as well. If you're ready to downsize or upsize, whether you own an RX or a GX, the TX is that bridge, and Lexus didn't have that before. But also, I think this is a better comparison to the MDX and Infiniti QX60 than the RX, although the RX has been a top seller in this market for many years. So it's almost as if Lexus is okay with sacrificing sales for the RX to really appeal to this growing and emerging market. So ultimately, what are my first impressions of the Lexus TX, and Would I like to experience the 500 at some point later on down the road? And absolutely I would, because the 350 is giving me a small glimpse and a small taste of what this model is going to give us. For somebody who is hopping into the TX for the first time, they're not going to feel disappointed, especially compared to an RX, but possibly even a GX as well. Lexus tunes their vehicles for luxury and refinement first, and that's exactly what the TX is going to give you. It's not sporty, it's not aggressive, it's not dynamic per se, but the 2.4 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine is more than competent and capable to exceed your expectations and meet your demands. However, if you are somebody who is looking for more of an engaging driving experience, definitely go with the 500. What I'm also going to say too, for a vehicle of this size at around 203 inches in length and 78 inches in width, is that it's more than just the handling, it's more than just the straight line speed and performance. It's also the practicality and the interior spacing. The fact that you can squeeze in average size adults in the third row is unheard of in this price range and market, but also that gives you so much more versatility than what we see from the Acura MDX, Infiniti QX60, Ford Explorer, and others in this market. And that right there alone is why you should take a look at the Lexus TX, because it's going to give you things that you're not going to find elsewhere. I do think though that from a mechanical aspect, from a efficiency aspect, you're going to want to go with the 500. But for the 350, the fact that you can spec this vehicle out with a full digital gauge cluster, heated and ventilated seats for both the first and second rows, this gives you the quality, the luxury, and the class, and the overall refinement that you would expect at around $65,000 to $70,000, which is why I do think this is certainly worth taking a look at if you're looking at buying a 3-row crossover right now in 2023, heading into 2024. So to quickly wrap up my time with the 2024 Lexus TX, what are my final thoughts and takeaways for Lexus's newest 3-row crossover? I've spent a lot of time with this vehicle today, and I've tried figuring out how it bridges the gap between the RX and the GX. And I've come to the conclusion that it's more like a GX rather than an RX. And a lot of it is because of the design and the styling. It looks like a vehicle that would come from a GX or LX line, but at the same time it has the driving style, the on-road comfort that you'd find in an RX. And it all makes sense to me now. The RX is a perfect 2-row crossover that can go head-to-head with some smaller competitors and be a great value at its price point, but it's not going to be spacious or practical enough for a family. And that's where the TX comes into play, because I think the GX is just too big of a leap forward from the RX for it to make sense for a lot of consumers. But the fact that you can fit an average size adult in the third row is huge for this vehicle, because no one else is giving you that, at least in the luxury market. You're not getting that from Acura, you're not getting that from Infiniti, you're not getting that from Volvo. Now, you might be able to find some of those attributes from the Volkswagen Atlas, maybe even the Chevrolet Tahoe, but again, those are not direct competitors. That would be an issue for the Toyota Grand Highlander. But when you're cross-shopping this with other domestic rivals from Japan, but also even the German and other European manufacturers, Lexus has something here that no one else has replicated yet. And this is definitely going to set the tone for what we see from the 3-row crossover market moving forward. This is going to be an emerging segment for sure heading into the second half of the 2020s. And it's great to see that Lexus is one of the first ones to really buy into this segment, because I think a lot of Americans are definitely going to love what this vehicle is providing. But also keeping in mind that this vehicle is designed for the American market, I think a lot of people are going to love what this SUV and crossover is providing, not only when it comes to the refinement, the quality, but also its on-road demeanor, and of course, that impeccable practicality. So guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe for more. Also make sure to follow me on Instagram at Boston Autoblog so you can see what I'm up to and what vehicles I'll be featuring in the future. And I will see you guys next time.